Now for the register view model implementation, I have went ahead a bit and pre-populate the things you have already seen me typing 1000 times throughout this course. So mainly that's the navigation service. I inject that through the constructor, and then I have also added 3 new validatable objects, one for email, one for password, and one for first name. I also added 2 new commands we will need in the register view. The first one is login command, and that command just goes to the login view. The second command is to register user. This is at the moment empty, and in this lecture we are going to implement this method. Register user command can be executed only if the view model is not busy. If the is busy is equal to true, then the command won't be triggered for the second time in a row. What we need to do is 2 tasks. So first one is to validate entered values. The second one is to perform the user registration. For validating entered values, I have created a method in the constructor add validations, and we will define all the validations we want to have for our 3 entries. So first one is email. So the first step is to actually define these 3 validatable objects. So we will just set that to the new validatable object. Also password. And next, let's add the rules we want to have. For email, we want to have 2 rules. So the first rule we are going to add, this is the rule that the entry shouldn't be null or empty. So I will add new is not null or empty rule for string, and validation message is going to be email is empty. The second rule we are going to add to the email is the email rule. So I'll define email rule for string, and if the email is not in the correct format, we will show the error message that email is not in a correct format. These 2 rules are available in the code snippets, but what they do is essentially that is not null or empty rule checks the string that it's not null or white space. The second rule is email rule. So this email has the regex check that the email is in a correct format. So the good thing is that we can reuse this regex throughout the application. So since we will be having email entry on both register and login views, we can reuse this rule and this logic. Okay, the next thing we are going to validate is name. Let's add a validation that this is not null or empty. And if it is, we need to write the error message that name is empty. So similar to the password, we will add new validation. So this is new validation, same thing. We will check that this is not null or empty. And if it is, we are going to say, hey man, password is empty. Okay, we have our validations ready, and here now we can go ahead and define the logic for validating entered values. We are going to define new method which will be named entries are correctly populated. and this will return bool whether or not all entries are in a correct format. So in this method, we are going to call validate email, validate name, and validate password. And the result of this method is going to be if the email is valid and if the name is valid and if the password is valid, then the method is going to return true. If any of these fields is not valid, the method will return false. So let's go ahead and use the method. So here we are going to say if entries are not correctly populated, we are going to return immediately. If this is valid, then what we can do is to create and save user details. For that, we need a new model class, and we will name this class simply user. So let's go ahead and create new user class. The user class has 3 properties. It has first name, email, and for storing password, we are going to store that to the hashed password property. This means we are not going to store password as a plain text. So if a user types in password 123456, then we are not going to store it as that, but instead we are going to hash it, meaning that we will convert it to an unrecognizable string. So it's not possible to get the password from that string. For password hashing, we are going to use the secure password hasher. This is a class that uses RNG crypto service provider in order to hash the password. We are not going to go through the implementation since this is not too important, but I will attach this class to this lecture so you can copy and paste it and use it in your projects. The other piece we need is the user repository. So the same way we register the repository for the transaction, we are going to store the repository for user. So let's go ahead and define this repository. And I have here one error stating that the user the user doesn't inherit from the base database item. Okay. And now the error should be gone. Yeah, it is. So you can see if you use this generic repository that it's relatively simple to create a new class which will entirely handle new table. In this case, this is user. Let's also define this repository here. So this is our repository of user. We need to resolve these 2 classes. So this is going to be name user repository. And we need another dependency here. This is going to be repository for our user. Let's call this repository and initialize our user repository with this repository. So now we can use the user repository, but first let's just create new user. So let's say var new user is equal to the new user and fill out the values. So email is equal to the email.value. First name is equal to the name.value. And lastly, hash password. So we are going to use secure password hasher to hash our password. So this is just to increase the security of our app. And finally, what we can do is to use the user repository to save this new user. Okay, what we can do once we save our user, we can set the preferences for is user logged in. So let's set for key is user logged in. We will set that to true, and we can use the navigation service to go to the main flow. So let's see the whole register user in action. Okay, we need to sign up, and I will enter some first name, email address, and password. Let's get started. And now I am in the main app, but the app is empty.